Monday 7:42 a.m. Brooklyn, New York. Rachel Morgan adjusted the collar of her blazer, took one last sip of black coffee, and stepped out into the brisk morning air. The sky above was a dull gray, the kind that made it hard to tell if it was still early or already too late. The subway ride had been uneventful, which in New York terms meant something good was due to go wrong. She reached the entrance of Valentech Systems, the sleek high-rise that she had walked into every weekday morning for the past 6 years. A glass box full of polished steel, ambition and politics. She had climbed its ranks quietly and steadily. From junior coordinator to senior project lead. But lately something had shifted. The greetings had dried up. The emails took longer to get replies. And in meetings her ideas, once praised, were now politely ignored or worse, repeated by someone else and applauded as if freshly minted. Rachel swiped her ID card and stepped through the revolving doors. The lobby still smelled of lemon-scented floor polish. The receptionist, Lily, gave her a quick nod, not warm, not cold, just pause. Like everyone else lately. She walked toward the elevators and pressed the button. 8:03 a.m. 15th floor. Her desk sat near the center of the open-plan office, directly across from the project manager she reported to, Darren Caldwell. Darren was in his early 40s, confident in that smug frat boy-turned-corporate way. He wore too much cologne and used phrases like, circle back, and moving the needle without irony. Rachel sat down, logging into her system. Her screen lit up with unread emails and calendar invites. Right on cue, Darren leaned back in his chair with a sigh loud enough to demand attention. Rachel, did you send the revised Q4 projections to Amanda yet? He asked, already knowing the answer. I sent them Friday, Darren. Twice actually. Want me to resend? He waved dismissively. No. Just checking. She says she hasn't seen them. Of course she hadn't. This was the third time in 2 weeks someone had not received an email Rachel had absolutely sent. It wasn't just oversight anymore, it was a pattern. She knew it. He felt it. But she also knew how this game worked. No one called it mobbing. That was too harsh, too real. Around here they called it alignment issues or communication gaps. 10:15 a.m. weekly strategy meeting. The glass-walled conference room was filled with the usual suspects. Department leads, project heads and Darren. Rachel sat at the end of the table, laptop open, notes prepared. This week's meeting was on product timelines for a new software rollout. Rachel had spent all weekend creating a revised deployment model that could save the team weeks of labor hours. She tested it, built a visual deck and shared the link with Darren the night before. He opened the meeting. Let's kick off with some quick thoughts on the deployment calendar. I've been playing around with some new models, and then he began clicking through slides. Her slides. Same charts. Same data. He had removed her name from the footer and pasted his own. Her stomach turned. She waited for him to mention her. Credit her. Glance her way. Nothing. For the rest of the meeting she sat still, expressionless. But inside something cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. But like a thin line across glass. Ready to spiderweb. 12:47 p.m. lunch. Rachel took her salad to the rooftop terrace. It was cold, but at least it was quiet. She needed quiet. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya, a former coworker who had left the company last year. Maya, just saw Darren repost your slide model on LinkedIn. Under his name. You okay? Rachel stared at the screen. So it wasn't just internal theft. He was showcasing it to his network. Taking her ideas, her labor, her weekend and turning it into his brand. She didn't reply. 2:20 p.m. HR pop-in. A knock on her desk. Leah from HR. Hey Rachel, quick minute? Rachel stood, following her down the corridor with the beige carpet and motivational posters about teamwork. They sat in a small room with a fake plant in the corner. So. Leah began, soft-voiced, polite. Just doing some routine check-ins. Making sure everyone's feeling supported. Anything you'd want to raise. Rachel paused. This was the test. Speak and you're the problem. Stay silent and you become invisible. She chose a third option. I've noticed some inconsistencies. Communications that get lost. Tasks I've completed not being acknowledged. Leah nodded, her expression unreadable. I see. Thank you for sharing. I'll keep an eye. Rachel almost laughed. You'll keep an eye? What did that mean really? But she smiled. Thanks, Leah. And walked back to her desk. 4:12 p.m. Slack message. A ping. Darren. Can you take care of the final client report for Thursday's presentation? I'll be in back-to-backs. Just make it look polished. Rachel stared at the screen. No, please. No, thank you. Not even an acknowledgement of her work this morning. She cracked her knuckles, rolled her shoulders and started typing. But this time she saved a backup. With version history. With timestamps. In her personal drive. She wasn't going to fight back just yet. But she was going to start documenting everything. 6:03 p.m. subway ride home. The car was half empty. Rachel leaned against the window, watching her reflection blur against the tunnel lights. She looked tired. Not physically but emotionally. Worn down in small, imperceptible ways. She thought of her younger self, fresh out of grad school, burning with ideas and caffeine, telling herself she could change a company from the inside. She hadn't expected resistance to come from above. From teammates. From people who smiled in meetings but erased her name afterward. The voice in her head whispered, maybe this is how it works. Maybe this is what they mean by paying your dues. But then another voice, quieter and older, said, or maybe it's time they paid for what they've taken. She didn't know exactly what that meant yet. But she would. Tuesday 6:18 a.m. Rachel's apartment, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. The alarm went off, but Rachel was already awake. She'd been lying there for almost an hour, staring at the pale streak of morning light inching its way across her bedroom wall. Her mind replayed fragments from yesterday, Darren's voice, the stolen slides, Leah's noncommittal nod. Rachel reached for her phone, scrolled through her emails and saw the LinkedIn post again. Darren's smug face next to her model. The caption read, "Innovation is a team sport. Proud to lead such a forward-thinking group." She dropped the phone on the bed. Her stomach tightened. Not from anger. From exhaustion. She rose, tied her hair into a low bun, and moved into the kitchen where a French press full of lukewarm coffee waited. She didn't bother heating it. Routine. That was how she survived now. Movement. That's order. She'd learned that long ago when everything felt out of control, you cling to structure. That lesson came from her father. Flashback age 15. Rochester, New York. Rachel sat on the front steps, shivering in the early autumn wind, waiting for her father to come home from the third shift. Her mother had already left, again. Said she needed space, like space could fill an absence. That night her dad didn't lecture. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just handed her a notebook and said, when the world doesn't listen, write anyway. That was the first time Rachel ever took power back. On paper, with facts, with details no one could deny. Present day 7:55 a.m. Rachel stepped onto the subway and scanned the car automatically, habit born of living in the city long enough. She chose the least suspicious-looking seat and pulled out a slim leather journal. Not for poetry. Not for feelings. For documentation. She had started writing everything down the night before. Dates. Times. Names. The missy emails. The plagiarized presentation. The Slack messages. If Leah wasn't going to see the pattern, Rachel would draw it for her, line by line. 9:12 a.m. office kitchen. Rachel stirred powdered creamer into the company's mediocre coffee. Amanda, one of the other project leads, walked in. She gave Rachel a nod, hesitated, then asked quietly, "Hey, everything okay with Darren? I noticed your slides looked kinda familiar yesterday." Rachel met her eyes. Measured her. She could lie. Say was fine. Pretend. Or, yeah, Rachel said simply. They were mine. He presented them as his. Amanda blinked. Oh. Long pause. Then in a lower voice, that's not the first time. Rachel looked up. What do you mean? Amanda glanced over her shoulder before continuing. He used to do the same to David. You remember David? Before he quit. Rachel nodded slowly. The cracks were spreading further than she thought. 11:03 a.m. Conference Room B. It was supposed to be a status check-in, but Darren was in one of his performative moods. He spoke loudly, used buzzwords, gestured dramatically. Rachel watched quietly as he misrepresented timelines she had crafted and minimized setbacks she had spent hours problem-solving. When it was her turn to speak, Darren interrupted twice. The third time she didn't stop. She raised her voice, not angry, not unprofessional, just firm. As I was saying, she continued, meeting his eyes, the current deployment lag is due to back-end API bottlenecks we flagged last Thursday. The workaround is already in place and we're on schedule as long as no one reassigns key developers mid-sprint again. The room went quiet for half a second longer than normal. Then a few heads nodded. One developer, Tasha, actually smiled. Rachel felt it. The shift. Small but real. 12:40 p.m. outdoor bench by the food trucks. Rachel sat alone eating Thai noodles from a cardboard box. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Maya. It was David. Heard what happened? Amanda told me. Glad someone's finally standing up to that jackass. If you need anything, docs, emails, let me know. I saved stuff before I left. Rachel stared at the message, heart racing. Evidence. Witnesses. Patterns. Maybe she wasn't crazy. Maybe she was just finally done being silent. 3:25 p.m. The quiet before the storm. She spent the afternoon finishing client revisions. Every email was triple-checked, BCC'd to her personal account and time-stamped. She added footnotes to shared docs. Subtle watermarks. Rachel wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. She was building something. Case. A shield. A voice that couldn't be drowned again. And with every documented lie, every forwarded email, every saved Slack message, she was laying down bricks. A wall between herself and the gaslighting machine. 7:02 p.m. Apartment. She sat cross-legged on her couch, files open, laptop on her knees. A small pile of printed screenshots sat beside her. This wasn't paranoia. It was self-defense. She wasn't a victim. Not anymore. He was preparing. And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a smile. Not because things were better, but because she had finally stopped shrinking. Wednesday, 9:07 a.m. Valentech Systems, 15th floor. The office felt colder than usual, not in temperature but in tone. Rachel stepped in with her usual neutral expression, her leather bag slung over one shoulder. She had barely logged in when a calendar pop-up appeared. All hands briefing, 9:30 a.m. executive conference room. Strange. All hands meetings didn't just happen midweek. And they definitely didn't get scheduled without notice. She glanced over at Darren, who was smirking at his screen, typing away like a man who had already won something. Something tightened in her chest. 9:29 a.m. executive conference room. By the time Rachel entered, most of the department was already seated. Darren stood at the head of the room, alongside Amanda and two unfamiliar faces in sleek suits. Consultants. Maybe compliance. Maybe PR. He cleared his throat. Thanks for making time, everyone. We wanted to share a major update regarding our Q4 strategy and, more importantly, the deployment initiative that's been a huge success so far. Rachel blinked. What deployment initiative? He clicked the remote. Her model again flashed across the giant screen. Again without her name. Polished. Rebranded. Renamed. Darren's initiative. Adaptive Deployment 360. The room clapped. Rachel didn't. Her hands stayed still on her lap. Her jaw clenched so tightly her ears rang. Then Darren added, "This model has received external attention too. As of next week, I'll be presenting this framework at the East Coast Tech Innovation Summit as one of Valentech's lead thinkers." The room broke into congratulatory chatter. Rachel felt everything inside her go still. No panic. No confusion. Just clarity. He had crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. 11:02 a.m. at her office. She knocked twice before entering. Leah looked up from her computer, surprised. "Rachel. Hey. Everything okay?" Rachel sat down across from her. "Calm. Steady. I'd like to formally file a complaint." Leah's face shifted. "Hey. About intellectual property theft. Workplace retaliation. Targeted exclusion. Documentation and timeline available on request." Leah blinked. "That's serious." "I'm aware." Rachel pulled out a neatly bound folder. "This is a copy. I've also submitted a digital version to the internal ethics portal. And I've contacted an external HR advisory just for consultation. I'm not suing anyone yet. I just want this investigated properly." Leah flipped through the pages. Screenshots. Emails. Slack messages. Timestamps. Revision logs. It was airtight. "You've been compiling this?" Leah asked. "For weeks." Silence settled between them. Then Leah said quietly, "You did the right thing coming here." Rachel stood. "I know." 1:17 p.m. Empty conference room. Amanda found her alone, laptop open, staring at a blank email draft. "Hey," Amanda said, closing the door behind her. Rachel looked up, eyebrows raised. "You okay?" Amanda sighed. "You know they're going to circle the wagons, right? Darren's been here forever. He's got friends." Pull. Rachel nodded. "I'm not trying to ruin him. I'm just not letting him ruin me." Amanda sat down. "For what it's worth, I've got your back. If they ask what I saw, I'll tell the truth." Rachel offered a small smile. "Thanks. That matters." More than she could admit out loud. 3:34 p.m. Darren's office. Darren was mid-phone call when Rachel walked in. He held up a finger, annoyed. "Can this wait?" "No," she said. He sighed dramatically, covering the receiver. "What?" "You stole my work. And this time you took it public." Darren scoffed. "You mean the presentation? Please, we're a team. You know how this works." "No," Rachel said, voice steady. "I know how you work." Pause. She stepped closer. "I filed a complaint this morning. Sure has a full record. External counsel's been looped in for transparency. I'm not bluffing. And I'm not scared of you." Darren's face shifted. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. For the first time he was unsure how to respond. Rachel turned and walked out. She didn't need his words. She had hers. 5:46 p.m. home. Rachel curled up on her couch, tea in hand, a playlist humming softly in the background. She wasn't celebrating. Not yet. But she was breathing. There was power in that. In taking back oxygen that had been stolen little by little. She didn't know what would come next, how the company would react, what kind of quiet retaliation might follow, but she didn't care. The silence she had endured for months had finally been broken. And if they tried to erase her again, she would make sure the whole damn building remembered her name. Thursday, 8:02 a.m. Valentech Systems, HR department. The meeting room was quiet. No buzzing laptops, no hushed side conversations. Just Rachel, Leah from HR, a senior compliance officer named Ms. Tran, and finally Darren. He looked paler than usual. No confident smirk today. No flashy tie. He didn't even try to meet Rachel's eyes. Ms. Tran opened a folder and spoke with crisp authority. "We've reviewed the materials. Cross-checked them with internal logs, revision histories, and communication archives." She turned a page. "There is a clear and repeated pattern of intellectual misappropriation, obstruction of attribution, and retaliatory behavior on the part of Mr. Caldwell." Silence. Leah added softly, "Rachel, your documentation was detailed, professional, and frankly impressive." Rachel didn't smile. He didn't need to. 9:15 a.m. Aaron's desk. By mid-morning, word had spread like office wildfire. Darren had been put on indefinite leave pending investigation, which everyone understood meant he was done. His desk sat half-packed, his nameplate quietly removed. Rachel walked past it without a glance. Tasha from Dev gave her a thumbs up as she passed. Amanda mouthed, "You could." Rachel nodded. "Better than good." 11:23 a.m. boardroom, top floor. To Rachel's surprise, she'd been invited to meet the executive director, along with Leah and Ms. Tran. She expected protocol. A formal apology at best. Instead, what she got was something else entirely. The director, a composed woman in her 60s, offered her a firm handshake. "Rachel, we failed to protect you," she said. "And we're grateful you didn't let that stop you." She paused. "As of next week, we'd like to formally promote you to Director of Product Strategy. Your leadership has already been evident. It's time the title matched it." Rachel blinked. This time she did smile. "Thank you. I accept." Friday, 7:45 a.m. Rachel's new office. The sun streamed in from floor-to-ceiling windows. Her name was etched on the glass wall. Rachel Morgan, Director of Product Strategy. She adjusted a photo on her desk. It was of her and her dad, both holding notebooks. She sat, took a deep breath, and opened her laptop. First email of the day? From a startup founder who had seen her name in the East Coast Summit roster. "Just wanted to say your deployment model changed the way we think. Thanks for putting that into the world." Rachel leaned back, fingers tented. This time the credit was hers. All hers. Saturday 6:03 p.m. Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Rachel met Amanda and Tasha at a local rooftop bar. The air was warm, music soft in the background. Laughter came easy. Amanda raised a glass. To not shrinking. Tasha added, to receipts. They clinked their glasses together. Rachel smiled, not the tired kind, not the polite kind. The kind that says, I made it. Epilogue. In the months that followed, Rachel instituted new policies at Valentech. Every project had mandatory version control with tracked contributions. Peer credit was built into performance reviews. A confidential reporting line was introduced and actually used. People talked. Not about what Darren did, but about what Rachel built. And when newcomers asked about the framed quote in the break room that read, "When the world doesn't listen right anyway," someone would always smile and say, "That's Rachel's line."